Hello and happy Thursday. We have a busy weekend ahead of us. Tomorrow, Friday the 13th, and then we're looking forward to the new moon, and we've got a solar eclipse as well. Got Halloween and Samhain are coming up in just a couple weeks. Summer is finally in the rearview mirror, for those of us up here in the northern hemisphere. And good riddance to 112-degree days. No, thank you, please. So a couple little notes to get to before we dive in today. I wanted to mention, for anyone who is new to the podcast, that all of these episodes are fully transcribed on the website, middleagedwitch.com. And so if there's ever a spell we discuss or a book we mention or whatever the case may be, you can pop on over to the website and find a written transcript of that episode. Secondly, a lot of lovely listeners have been checking out the Etsy shop, and so I created a discount code specifically for listeners of this podcast. So if you see anything in the shop that you like, just use the discount code podcast and you'll get 15% off your entire order. So I really appreciate you, and I will link to everything that we talk about today down in the show notes. And so on we go. Today's topic was inspired by a witch named Bryn, who actually suggested that we talk about sacred cycles and witchcraft, specifically menstruation. And I am going to cover that topic in a future episode, but I had been kicking around the idea of a general blood magic episode for a while. I just wasn't sure if it was too out there. I wasn't quite ready to pull the trigger on that idea until Bryn wrote in that suggestion, and I was like, to hell with it. So if today's episode is too weird, I do apologize. It's not my intent to alienate anyone, but not every episode will be for every witch. But we're talking about blood magic today, and in the course of this discussion we are going to cover some themes that aren't typically spoken of in, the mainstream witchcraft conversation. And maybe that seems like a bit of an oxymoron, mainstream witchcraft, but come on, we know there's a vast difference between, I don't want to say tame, but that sort of, love and light, jar of rose petals style of witchcraft versus the more chicken bone, urine jar, crossroads dirt kind of witchcraft. And there's plenty of room for both under the witchcraft umbrella. And one witch's practice is no better or worse than another witch's practice. But today we're going to get a little bit freaky. And y'all, I'm a little bit of a freak. So with that warning, let's go. Now, we use a lot of different elements in our craft. We use candles, oils, flowers, herbs, shells, feathers, crystals, metals, stones, bones, and so on. We do this because we recognize that these extra elements can, first of all, help us to narrow our focus to our very specific intentions, but also because these additional elements give our work extra power. And a personal concern, such as blood, is incredibly powerful. Anytime we use a part of a person, of ourselves, in our spell work, we're turning it up to 11. As an example, if I'm working on a spell for another person, I will include, whenever I can, some of that person's hair, or their nail clippings if I can possibly get them. In a pinch, I will include a sample of that person's handwriting, because in a matter of speaking, I want to give the universe the scent of the person for whom the work is being performed. Now, as another example, if we're working a spell to help ourselves exert some kind of influence over someone else, or if we're sick of them inserting their influence over us, we can frequently, and to very great effect, use our own urine in that work. It's gross, I know, but it works. You know, I've used this analogy before, but it's similar to the way that a dog will mark its territory to establish its own dominance. It works because nature recognizes it. And if, you know, hair and urine and saliva are good, blood is better. And I know it's yucky and everything, and if it isn't for you, that's fine. That's so fine. We should never disrespect anyone's boundaries, especially our own. So if this is not something you're ever going to be interested in, it's fine. You can and will perform incredible work without it. But if you are down with it, or if you think you might be, or even if you're just a little curious, we are going to talk about the hows and whys of using blood in witchcraft. Now, as far as why we might consider using blood in our spell work, I'm going to quote author and witch Kate Fruhler. Blood can be offered as a sacrifice or devotional, employed in spells to strengthen the energetic link to yourself or someone else, or used to create a bond between members of a coven. The DNA in your blood contains your whole inherited lineage. This means that every single ancestor you have is present in your blood, making it a substance that reaches further back into time than we can conceive of. Those who do choose to partake in blood ritual do so for a wide range of reasons. Adding a drop of blood to a tincture, oil, spell, or charm acts as a binding agent between your physical, earthly self and the energy of the spell. Including blood in a spell helps add a deep vitality to it. For some, it brings the element of sacrifice to the working. It also beckons the power of ancestors into your magic. While hair and fingernails are dead cells of a person and contain their essence and DNA, blood is a living substance. This makes it different and, some believe, more powerful. Now, when it comes to work that we do for ourselves, there are very few spells I can think of that wouldn't be enhanced by the addition of some of our own blood. For the reasons that we just said, it creates a very strong link between ourselves and the spell itself, and it gives the work the power of our own life force. That's heavy. Anointing a candle with a bit of your blood during a money spell is a great idea. Adding a little blood to a honey jar for your sweetening spell is awesome. Adding blood to a protection spell is gonna be, chef's kiss perfection. I'm not exaggerating. Any spell we do for ourselves, and even many of the spells we do for others, are going to be so well supported by the addition of our blood in the work. Okay, but we do have to talk about safety. The first kind of safety that we want to observe is safety to ourselves when we are sourcing this blood. Please only use a sterile lancet on your fingertips to draw your blood. Leave those ritual knives out of this. We don't want to use razors. We don't want to use athames. We don't want to use any kind of knives. And we don't want to draw blood from anywhere else but our fingertips. A sterile lancet on the fingertip is going to release more than enough blood for our work. A few drops of blood go a very long way. And a sterile lancet isn't going to leave scars. Lancets can be purchased easily and inexpensively at the pharmacy. So just ask the cashier at your Walgreens to point you in the right direction. And while you're there, get a bottle of rubbing alcohol too, because you've got to wash your hands and sterilize the area before you poke it. Now, if you would rather just use your own menstrual blood, which is also known as moon blood, for your work, then please do, by all means. But again, keep those hands washed. We're not afraid of our own blood, but we aren't nasty either, so just wash your hands. And although it certainly is not for everyone, using moon blood in a spell has a long and well-documented history. It has been used in curses, particularly to destroy crops. It's frequently used in love and fidelity spells. Some of the more well-known examples of that are to bury some of your moon blood on your desired lover's property to make them become infatuated with you. Also, smearing some of your moon blood on the soles of your lover's shoes will ensure that he always comes home to you. But, it's not all curses and love spells. My favorite, I think, probably my favorite folk spell that uses menstrual blood is for gambling, actually. It's said that if a man wraps his money in a handkerchief that's got a bit of his woman's moon blood on it, he can hit the tables all night and never lose. But, beyond moon blood, beyond menstrual blood, we can use our blood in our work in all kinds of ways. So, charge a sigil with blood. When appropriate and when possible, use blood instead of oil to anoint your candles. It's a good idea to include blood in healing spells. This is where that sacrificial element from before can come into play, by giving our own blood in the course of the ritual towards the healing of our intended target. And going back to earlier, this is a great way to give our ancestor work an extra boost. Echoes of our entire lineage are present in our blood. And these are the same echoes that will be in the blood of our own descendants, generations and generations from now. Adding our blood to these kinds of spells is like adding lighter fluid to a fire. We may not need it to start those flames, but it's going to give it a hell of a kick. Now, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge and address that it is definitely a thing for some people in the witchcraft community to imbibe one another's blood in the course of their own private rituals. I have no feelings on that. People should do what they do. But it should go without saying that that is not an activity that should be undertaken lightly. Sharing blood is a really big deal. For personal health and safety reasons, absolutely. But also because it's a huge and significant energy exchange. This is the exchange of our life's essence, so you give someone a whole lot of influence over you by ingesting their blood in any kind of way. And they will also give you a whole lot of influence over them if they ingest your blood. So it's a mixing of energies. It's perfectly fine if it's done, conscientiously and safely. But it's not something to just be done. It's a little more serious than that, in my opinion. I'm not trying to lecture. But, just that blood exchange, we can get really caught up really quickly. And so this is not something that should just be done casually. And please, 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 never, ever, ever put your own or anyone else's blood, urine, semen, saliva, etc. in anything that someone else is going to consume without their knowledge and their consent. That's assault, and that's illegal. And even with consent, it can be dangerous. And we're just not interested in getting anybody sick or spreading disease, and we're definitely not interested in any unethical demonstrations of influence. So just proceed with an abundance of caution. But other than that, if you're feeling bold, put some blood in that work and just see how it can enhance it. This is such a fun little thing to try. So be responsible, but be bold. And have a wonderful Friday the 13th, and a kick-ass new moon, and a hell of a solar eclipse. My name is Eli Rowe, and this has been the Middle-Aged Witch Podcast.